Basically, you just have to know one concept, which is the harmonized scale. And when you'll know this, you'll be able to create any chord progression you want. Okay, so what is the harmonized scale? Basically, it's building a chord, a triad, or 7 chords, obviously, on top of each note of the scale. So we're going to consider each note of the scale as a root note for a particular chord. Let's take the C major scale, for instance. We're going to start on C, obviously, and that is going to be our root note for the chord that we're going to build. So we're going to take C, root note, then we need a third, so C, D, E, 3 notes counting from the scale. So we have C, E, then the fifth, so 5 notes counting from the scale, so C, D, E, F, G, and that's the fifth. Now if we look at the intervals that we are creating, basically we have a major third between C and E, and then a perfect fifth from C to G. That basically gives us a major triad. And so on the first degree of the scale, we're going to have a major chord, a major triad. And then you basically repeat the same process for every other note of the scale. Let's take D, so the second degree of the scale. So we consider D as a root note, then we take a third, which is going to be D, E, F. So F is the third from D, and then we take a fifth, so D, E, F, G, A. And now if we look at the intervals, we see that D, F is a minor third, and then D, A is a perfect fifth. So we have basically a minor triad this time. So why did I pick F instead of F sharp, for instance? How do you know? Well, basically you have to stay within the C major scale, since we're harmonizing that scale. So obviously F sharp is not contained in a C major scale, and that's why you're going to use F, so the minor third instead of the major third. That's why on the second degree of the scale we have D minor instead of D major. And so if you do the same process for each other note of the scale, you should end up with a formula that looks something like this. So 1 major, 2 minor, 3 minor, 4 minor, 5 major, 6 minor, 7 diminished. And these are going to stay the same across every major scale, obviously, no matter what key you're in. So basically then it's just a matter of transposing different chords. You know, there's always going to be a major chord on one, a minor chord on 2, and so on. So how can we use this to create chord progression? What does this mean? It means that you can choose any of these chords to create a chord progression in a certain key, since basically every one of these chords is actually generated from that key in some way. So can you pick random chords? Kinda. You see, every chord has a certain function that you have to keep in mind while you build a chord progression. Basically, we can divide the diatonic chords into 3 groups. In the first one, we're going to put every chord that doesn't generate tension at all. And those are the 1, the 6, so in the case of C major, obviously, and A minor. In some way also the 3, so E minor, but kind of in a weird way. Maybe we'll get back to this later. Then in the second group we have the chords that generate some tension, and those are the 2 and the 4, so D minor and F major. They kind of prepare to the bigger tension which comes from the chords from group 3, let's say, so G major and B diminished. So those are the chords that really generate a lot of tension and they really want to resolve back to 1, for instance. If I play G7 or G major, you can feel a certain tension and you really want to resolve back to home. So again, group 1, C major or A minor, you see they, they don't really create tension. Group 2, D minor, they kind of, it's like the thing is evolving, it's kind of going somewhere. Even though there's not really an obvious tension, it's kind of leading the harmony to go somewhere. And then finally, big tension. It really wants you to resolve back to C, or even back to A minor. And you can use any one of these chords which are in the same group kind of as a substitute for one another. So I can use G to create tension, but at the same time I can also use B diminished, or I can use C to resolve the tension, but also A minor. So it works, you see, in kind of the same way. And also D minor and F, since they're in the same group, they kind of have the same function. Based on the function of each chord, you kinda create movement in the chord progression. You know, harmony is kinda about telling a story, so based on the function of each chord, you're gonna create a different story, basically. Now, about the three, so E minor, it's kind of I don't really know how to define this, but it can be a static chord. For instance, if I play it's creating some movement, but it's not tension, you know. It's like coloring the harmony, but it's not introducing really tension. I wouldn't define that as a tension chord. So you can use that with C major and A minor, but I wouldn't resolve on that. If I play G major, I can't really use E minor to resolve. It's not really resolving at this point. It still needs to go somewhere else, I think. But it's also not really creating tension. I guess it kind of depends on the context in which you use that. Anyway, let's actually try to write a chord progression from scratch. Let's keep it simple for now. This is the key. Just keep it simple. Keep it 4 bars, which is the basic length for a chord progression. And let's see how we can combine different chords together, different functions together to create a chord progression that makes sense. So the basic starting point would be obviously to have no tension in the progression. So C major, A minor, those are good starting points for a chord progression. So let's take C, for instance, on bar 1. Now I can start to create some tension, so to kind of tell a story, to introduce some movement by using a chord from group 2, so D minor or F. So it's going somewhere at this point, and maybe from here I can go to G, maybe resolve back to C, or maybe I can go to A minor. A first idea could be C, D minor, G, A minor, and back to C. Maybe not the most interesting chord progression, but as a starting point, this is a good way of getting familiar with every function of every chord. Of course, we don't have to start from C or from A minor. So we could start from F, for instance. Maybe go into G, and then to A, which goes to C. So then back to F, so this is actually quite nice. So we have 4, F, going to 5, so G, going to 6, very common, again, and then 6 going to 1. So 4, 5, 6, 1, and back on 4. So you see, starting from F, so starting with already some tension in the chord progression, kind of gives it a different vibe, so it could be interesting for you to use that in a song or whatever. Obviously, we could do the same starting from D minor, and it would sound pretty much the same. Because again, you can use any chord within the same group of amount of tension, and it's gonna have pretty much the same function. So D minor or F, going to G or B diminished, which is less used, I guess, in a... It sounds more dramatic. But yeah, it's up to you to kind of experiment with the different colors you can get out of every diatonic chord. Let's actually try a few more chord progression ideas. So maybe we could start on A minor. Why not? And we could go to C. We don't have to change function for every bar. You know, we can stay in the same group of tension. So A minor to C. And then maybe at this point we could introduce some tension, so maybe F. And maybe back to A minor. So a more chill chord progression with less tension. So this would sound like this. You could use like passing chords, so maybe a chord that happens in a very short amount of time. So maybe on the last bar of A minor, we could play G major right before C. So it would sound something like this. Pay attention to the last bar of the progression. So you see, I played C kind of on an upbeat before going back to A minor. Actually G, sorry, before going back to A minor. And so obviously you can put any chord in any beat of the measure to kind of create more interest in a chord progression. And so I guess this could be a good starting point for you to then experiment yourself with different things. But again, keep it simple, especially when it comes to chord progressions. Most of the time a simple chord progression is going to be more effective than maybe a more elaborated one. Obviously it depends on the song, but you know, even if it's something as simple as 2 chords, maybe 3, it can be super effective in the right context. So yeah, pay attention to that. Anyway guys, that's it from today's video. Hope you liked it. If so, leave a like or a comment. As always, it's very appreciated. If you look forward to more videos like this one, definitely make sure to subscribe, because I'll be uploading more in the near future. In any case, I'll see you in the next one. Ciao!